Hello everybody and welcome back to Star Wars Battlefront 2. A new update has gone live named Night on Endor, which adds this unique gameplay mode that you're going to see in the background. It's cool, we'll talk about that, but most importantly, this update adds the new progression system into the game. And the easiest and quickest way to describe what has changed is you can now just say that Star Wars Battlefront 2 is Overwatch as far as the loot chests are concerned, and the progression isn't that far off either. So, generally speaking, what they have done is completely revamped everything, and you no longer need to go and get loot chests in order to get star cards. Star cards for your power-ups before, like, increasing grenade damage or stuff like that. Just weird, like, buffs across the board. Some way better than others, but most of all, those were the ways that you would like customize whatever classes you were using. You no longer get those out of chests, and instead you unlock them simply by leveling up, getting skill points, and using those skill points to unlock the ones that you want. So it's a more targeted system, which is great. Overall, it's really, really good. We'll talk about that more in a second. I did want to talk about this Night on Endor update. What is it? Or rather, this gameplay mode. It is an asynchronous multiplayer, as in you start off with one side having way more players than the other. So on the Stormtrooper side, on the Empire side, this takes place pretty much right after the destruction of the Death Star at night on Endor. And instead of being all lamenting and, oh, the war's over and everything, you pretty much find yourself in the worst nightmare ever, which is you're having to survive against waves of Ewoks coming at you. So for the Empire, as you're playing on the, whatever Stormtrooper you're on, you're in the middle of the dark. It's really, really hard to see, and you're trying to have to survive against these Ewoks coming at you from all angles. And these Ewoks are not NPCs, they are controlled by players. And the reason it is asynchronous is because at the beginning of the match, there are more Stormtroopers than there are Ewoks. It will put about 2 Ewoks on the other team and about 20 Stormtroopers on the Stormtrooper team. And if you manage to kill one of the Stormtroopers, that Stormtrooper is now completely dead and becomes an Ewok. So as one side starts to kill off the other, that side becomes stronger and has more people, and it becomes way more difficult to survive for the other team. So the Stormtroopers don't have a whole lot available to them. Obviously, they have a flashlight and a blaster, and sometimes that flashlight will just randomly turn off, which is randomly annoying because rather annoying because it can make it so at the worst possible time you could be ambushed by one of these damn Ewoks coming out of nowhere. But it is kind of meant to do that. It's meant to just randomly turn off, so you can't just, hold up in a corner and be fine the entire time. It adds a sense of tension to it. And then for the Ewoks, you have several different abilities. You have this one so you can track, like, the footprints of the Stormtroopers. You have this one, Bola's attack that throws these little light things that do damage over time onto somebody. They attach to them and they kind of do damage over time. But it's a effect in an area that they throw down. And it's really annoying, but your health does regenerate a bit. You can also, poke people with your little staff that doesn't do much damage, but it's possible to kill somebody like that. And then finally, there's a horn that you can blow that reduces the damage you take, and it just gives you a general buff. So the two sides are definitely unequal. It is way easier to kill the Ewoks than it is for the Ewoks to kill the Stormtroopers. But once 1 or 2 Stormtroopers get taken out and the side slowly starts turning over to the Ewoks, and you have good Ewok players, it starts becoming really intense, and it's scary because these things come out of nowhere. They're hard to see. They are like little tiny demon bears. It is the worst. Overall, it is a cool idea for a gameplay mode, but it's not the best. It gets old really fast, and there is a cave on the map that you can go hold up in. And if you do that as a Stormtrooper, it's pretty easy to hold the Ewoks off. And if you have a really good Stormtrooper team, the chances are you're going to win, because at the very end, a ship comes down and you have to make it to the ship. If you make it to the ship, you are evacuated. And if all of the remaining Stormtroopers are evacuated, then the Stormtroopers win. So basically, the Ewoks have to kill the stormtroopers so they cannot get to the ship. And it's just really difficult with that cave because you can hold up in that cave very easily, and that seems to be the meta of the map at the moment. I like the idea, but I wish that there wasn't a cave on the map and the stormtroopers had to run around in the forest, because if you were running around in the forest, which are loaded with traps and whatnot, which makes it way more scary, it is a lot more difficult to survive than it is if you were in the cave. But then it just becomes way unbalanced where the Ewoks do too much damage. It's always going to be in favor of the Ewoks. So it's annoying, but at the same time, I understand why they've done certain things on this map. It feels like they could do a lot better with it in the future, but this is just a limited time thing, so I'm not too concerned. It's cool. I enjoy it. It is a nice little addition to go on top of the rest of the gameplay update, which is the progression stuff. So I said this before, but essentially all you need to do now is play the game, and as you're playing the game, you're going to get XP on your character. So if you're playing a specialist, you're going to get XP on them. If you're playing a commander, you're going to get XP on them. If you're playing a hero character like Luke or Leia or Han Solo, you're going to get XP on them. And then when you get that experience, you can use that to buy skill points, or rather you use the XP, which gives you skill points, and then use the skill points to unlock star cards. So that's how the progression now works. It is no longer you open up loot chests and hope to get the star card that you wanted, which is what it was before, which is why people really hated it. So now you're just trying your hardest to level up your characters, which is nice because it feels more like Battlefield in that way, where you would level up, your engineer or whatever, and then you were a really good engineer, and it felt good to be that guy who had like all the engineer stuff unlocked. Well, now you can be that guy in Star Wars Battlefront 2, which I really quite enjoy. On top of that, star cards work differently now. I've noticed that the star cards, or rather all of the hero stuff, you upgrade them the exact same way as other characters now. You just you use the skill points to unlock their star cards. But as the heroes are concerned, I've noticed all of them are unlocked, and I didn't see this anywhere in the patch notes, so I'm not quite sure. Maybe I just missed it, but I'm a little curious as if that is for everybody or just people who own the game currently. So before, I only had maybe half of the heroes unlocked, and now they're all unlocked. So I think that they just gave them all to us. So you might wonder, like, what are you getting out of these loot chests now? Well, basically, as I said earlier, it is now Overwatch. When you get a chest, a loot crate, whatever you want to call it, you then get this thing that is either a cosmetic or more credits. So you can use the credits to buy cosmetics. So if you have a lot of credits left over from the previous version of the game, which I do, you can pretty much buy 1 or 2 cosmetics. They cost a lot, but you're getting a lot more credits. I should mention that. Before, you were not getting a whole lot of credits. Now you're getting, like, on average, like 500 a game, which is quite a bit. So it is very quick to unlock whatever cosmetics that you want if you don't want to use the loot crate system. So the best way to break this down is, imagine you are playing as a clone trooper. So you're playing on one of the prequel maps, and maybe you're on Naboo, right? And you're playing on the side of the clones. You can have it so your clone trooper looks the way that you want it to, based on what class you're playing. So you could be like a different looking specialist than you are a heavy, or you could be an officer that looks much different than everybody else, because you can choose how those look. Likewise, on the opposite side of things, if you were playing as a droid, you could choose the way that your droid looks. That said, currently the system is pretty limited. They're added a lot of cosmetics in there, a surprising amount indeed, and all of them are pretty high quality. But the problem is you don't really have the option to choose for everything at the moment. So they haven't added skins for everything, just most things. And in a lot of cases, they've only added skins for one of the sides. So for example, like the Resistance and the Rebels, there are a lot more options for them than there are for a Stormtrooper, for instance, just because that's kind of the way they've decided to break it down at the moment. But they have said that more cosmetics are on the way, so don't worry about how it is divvied up at the moment. The good news is the rebels and the resistance do have good skins. So it's not just like a different version of generic human number one. You've got like Twi'leks and Miri Allen in there, which is really cool. And then there's even other like weird aliens like the Aquilish or whatever they're called that they've decided to throw in there. So you can actually make whatever character on that side that you're playing look the way that you want. And again, you can change it up based on what class you're playing. And I really, really like that. On top of that, all of the heroes now have different cosmetics. So, you could play as the Last Jedi version of Rey, or you could play as Rey from The Force Awakens. And of course, there are plenty of other characters in the Star Wars universe that, span multiple generations or just have a lot of different looks to them. Leia, for example, has a huge amount of looks that she has within the original trilogy compared to the new stuff. So it's an option for them to go through and add all sorts of really cool cosmetics for every character, and that appears to be what their plan is. But it also looks like they're going to time it up with specific launches of, Star Wars content. So, for example, on May 25th, I believe it's May 20-somethings, we get Solo, which is the Han Solo movie. And I'm sure we're going to get a Han Solo skin, a young Han Solo skin in the game, because they've already said that they kind of want to time up content drops with those kind of things. So, for example, we're going to get stuff for that, I'm sure, for whatever the next movie is or whatever the next toy adaptations or anything like that. Whenever they add that stuff or release that kind of stuff, I'm sure we'll get content updates for stuff like that in Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is great. Unless, of course, they come out with a new Star Wars Battlefront, which they might between now and the third movie, which is highly likely. In which case, I'm sure they'll just adapt this system over. And that brings me to kind of my final point that I want to talk about here, which is they have reversed everything. They have gone back since the crazy, nasty launch that they had of all the negative feedback of your loot crates are pay to win and just all of that stuff. They've immediately stopped that. Remember, they took the microtransactions out and they said, okay, this is a bad move. You guys are right. We're going to redo this. We're going to make it right. Not only have they said that, but they've actually gone and done that. They've reversed all of the pay to win stuff. They've redone the progression system, and they've added in what essentially everybody who was in the Battlefront community wanted to begin with when it comes to cosmetics, which is just give us Overwatch styles of loot crates if you're going to do them, and allow us to have, different kind of clone troopers, because people who love the clone series really do like their different version of clone troopers. But on top of that, there's all these really cool aliens in the game that you can have us be if we're resistance or rebels or anything like that. I'm really glad they've decided to go this decision, or rather this direction with things, and it does kind of help win me back a bit. I'm like, if they decide to do a Star Wars Battlefront 3, which I think is unlikely to hear about for quite some time, then I think they've learned their lesson, and they will make sure that they don't make that same mistake. And I think that's a good thing, because it's going to be really difficult to win people back now. After what happened this last fall, I think they lost a lot of their grace with people, and it's going to be very, 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 very hard to win that back for the majority of people who aren't keeping up to date with like the fact that this game just got updated and is now what we wanted it to be, which I had confidence would be the case once they made their announcement like back in November when the game launched. So it is kind of a difficult situation for them to be in, but they've done a really good job of going back and making something that we actually want to play. It just might be a little too late for this game, so I'm kind of excited to see if they do come out with more single player content, which it seems like they do want to, and I'm excited to see if they end up coming out with a new game within the next couple of years that just takes the system that they learned from and maybe revamps it a little bit more, makes it a little bit better. But at the end of the day, like I said, there's a lot of cosmetics that they could add to this game, and they've done a great job of it thus far. But with all of that being said, I want to know what your guys' thoughts are on Battlefront 2 now that they've made it not bad and they've added all this really cool stuff in and revamped the progression the way that people wanted it to be. But we shall see you guys next time.